Oh, alrighty, folks. I have a special treat for you today. I have somebody that I follow on Twitter or X. I call him Dr. Ed. He goes by Eddie. He's been in the real estate game for 35 years. He is a high income earner. He just recently got his 10th property. It's an STR. We will learn more about it. But again, folks, real estate investing over the long term is the path to wealth. You do not need to do hundreds of transactions. It's just a methodical pace, and you could do some pretty amazing things. So let's welcome Dr. Ed. Eddie, how you doing, buddy?
I'm great, Mike. Thanks for having me. Can you see me? I hit a button. I was afraid I made myself go away there for a
Nope,
second.
you're good. You're all good.
Okay, good. Very
Never
good.
left. Well, Eddie, do me a favor. Just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do in this crazy world of real estate, and we'll get into the story.
Okay. Yeah. I'm a dentist, and have been a dentist for nearly 40 years now. It's hard to believe. It gets by pretty fast.
Yeah.
But you know, my wife and I started out in real estate really without knowing anything. And we bought our first property in 1994, which was just a few years, about 5 years after I went into practice, maybe a little bit less. But, it wasn't through, I mean, we really didn't have a plan. We just thought, well, Austin real estate prices are good. The demographics here are good. This should be a reasonable investment to make. And, both of us just came from families that were, generally felt like real estate was worth owning. And so it wasn't a hard sell for us, but we really didn't know how to do it or how it worked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's go back to 1994. I've never spoken with anyone who was doing transactions back then, so this should be fun. This was a duplex in Austin, if memory serves.
In
I'm just
close, in
curious.
close in South Austin,
There you go.
a nice little duplex that I probably paid too much for. I paid 100 and a quarter, uh, and like I said, we held it for 14 years.
Nice. I'm just curious. Do you happen, and if you don't remember, so I don't think I could remember, but do you remember what that original rent might have been way back in 1994?
Oh gosh. Oh, I don't even. I really don't, Mike.
Yeah,
I've just
it's okay.
lost that.
I wouldn't have remembered either, but it was a lot less than today.
Oh, absolutely. The property, is probably worth now about four times what I paid for it in '94.
Okay.
Uh, so
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
would guess that rent is probably up, close to that as
Yeah, you
well.
would think. Yeah, 400% makes total sense. And again, you talked about you bought a duplex. You didn't really know what you were doing. So I usually translate that as bought it off the MLS, called up an agent or real estate friend, put 20 or 25% down, 30-year financing, just bread and butter.
I was even stupider than that. Okay. I,
Okay.
I decided I wanted to do a 15-year loan because I just wanted basically to get it paid for because that was my goal was to buy this asset and get it paid for. And I didn't really understand how leverage works or how mortgage gives you leverage in real estate. And it was actually quite some time later that I learned that.
Okay.
But I can tell you about my journey about becoming educated in real estate, but that really didn't start until the 2000s. Honestly.
Yeah. Well, again, let's get into that. Let's talk about that journey from that first duplex. Again, you have 10 units now. Congratulations. You got an STR. We'll get to that story in a minute. But so where does
I
this
have
journey
10, I
go?
have 10 units, and I also have 52 units of boat storage, which is
Oh,
another a little side business that I have. That
nice.
one of the properties that I bought was a boat storage facility, an old one,
Yeah.
uh, and it had a rental property on the site. It's a commercial lot out on Lake LBJ, and we had bought a little cottage out there, and this place came on the market. So I have that. I have an entire, what my friend Mike Phillips used to call a briar patch business. Uh, uh, on the side. That's my side hustle, and it's also pretty effortless. You'll see the pattern to my investing if you follow this. I like to do things that are easy
Uh,
because you
Yeah,
know.
let's do it. I think a lot of folks, again, one of the things, if people didn't put two and two together, is a dentist. Dentists are high paying careers, especially as you stay in the game longer and build your practice. Um, One of the things that we talked about before we hit the record button, we just hit it now, is high income earners, right? I actually looked this up because for reference, the top 1% of earners, so we're not talking wealth, we're talking W2 or business owners, pays a whopping 45% of income taxes collected. Yes, folks, I don't want to hear about the top 1% paying their fair share. I will say that again. The top 1% of income earners pay 45% of all income tax collected. Folks, if you're a high income earner, you got to pay attention. Eddie, that's crazy, right?
Well, yeah, and it's really the people at the bottom of that 1% who proportionally pay the most. You know,
Correct.
I because I'm on Twitter and because I'm interested in certain uh, uh, assets that put me in contact with people who are corporate officers and things like that. You know, I hear a lot from people in the corporate world, you know, that cites that 1% number. But I've spent a lot of time, you know, really looking at that more carefully. If you take that 1% and you look at just those people, then you see the people at the bottom of the 1% are the ones carrying the really heavy load. And with far fewer options of how to do anything to hang on to their own money at the end of the year. Okay.
I agree with that entirely. And really what you're highlighting at that without saying it is the income tax, like the tax code. It is a reward and penalty system. If you are simply a high income earner, you are taken out to the woodshed and beaten. If you are a business owner and you leverage the tax code for owning the space you live in or doing other things, um, you can shelter a lot of that. So it's funny. We talk about the top 1% paying 45% of total collection. If you look at the top 1% of that 1%, they're paying like 3% of all of it. So to your point, it's the, I don't know, the bottom third, the bottom half that are paying it. So I'm curious, Eddie, when did you realize that? When in your career, did you realize that, oh my God, we make a lot of money, but we're not keeping it? When did that light bulb go on?
Well, you know, when I hit started to get to my peak practice years, there was a year when we had to write a check for nearly $250,000 to the IRS. And
That was not fun, I bet.
no, it wasn't fun. And, you know, I mean, I was already, you know, more or less seething
Yeah,
of my status and how, I mean, I worked really hard to build my practice and I try to treat people well. I try to do good treatment. I try to do everything you're supposed to do. And
right.
then, you know, we have four kids, right? And we don't live a lavish lifestyle, but we have a nice lifestyle. And it's honestly hard to cover all the bases if you're paying, you know, maybe 30% or more of what
Yeah,
you know your net is from your business, and
yeah.
it's just a lot. And you know, from the beginning I was interested in learning about money and banking and all the things that we all talk about on Twitter and everybody's familiar. You know, I was interested in gold and stocks and almost any asset class you could name. I've lost money in it, you know. And you know,
Honest reflection
and
right
made a
there.
little here and there. I had my windfalls as well, but nothing ever worked for me like real estate. And one main reason is because real estate is the only asset, or one of the very few, maybe oil and gas. There are a few other little things that you can do, but for most ordinary people and people who have a small business or have a professional practice, the very easiest way to get some tax shelter is real estate, and it's because depreciation is a non-expense deduction. So you
Mhm.
get a deduction on your taxes that you didn't have to write a check to pay some vendor for, you know, supplies, or you didn't have to pay that out in your payroll or anything like that. It's just a little break. And if you get enough of those, it starts to matter. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, it definitely helped us a lot. I do try to, proselytize my fellow dentists and other professionals that they should consider this. That's one reason I'm on Twitter. I really came to Twitter to try to educate myself about other things that I was interested in other than real estate. But because real estate really was, kind of my biggest theme in my whole life of investing, to some degree, I began to see that maybe there was a niche that I could fill and teach some things that I had learned and maybe help somebody. I really, really feel, I'll say badly, because I think dentistry is still it's a very worthy career, but young professionals today have it very tough, even tougher than I had it. And I can tell you that when I went into practice nearly 40 years ago, the old guys were saying that then, and it was true, right? It
Yeah.
just gets harder and harder. All right. And so these young guys, they need to figure out money as fast as they can. Otherwise, they're just going to be, basically just robbed,
Yeah.
honestly, for their whole career. And I hate to see that happen. I like to see people thrive. I want to see them build wealth. We live in a society, where we have fiat money, we have inflation. If you don't beat inflation, inflation will beat you. That's just the way
Yeah.
things.
Inflation's a feature, not a bug. And the sooner you understand and realize that, the sooner you can play the game, right? Don't hate the player, hate the game. The game's out there for all of us. You either can wake up and pay attention, or like you say, let the game beat you. It's the game's going on regardless. So I want to get into the kind of one of your superpowers, and it is probably because you were so busy, big career, building a practice, 4 kids. Really, a lot of your real estate investing journey was just staying the course, right? Just staying in the game. Is that right?
It very much so. I wanted, basically in the years between the time we bought the first duplex in 94 and 2009, when things fairly radically changed on my path, we were in a holding pattern, and we went through many challenges. I went through a bankruptcy,
Hmm.
okay? And I went through the bankruptcy because the IRS, okay? I mean, I blame it on them. It was over like an amount of money that I could write a check for today and just going down the highway. But at that time, I was young. I had, all these responsibilities, and I went to the IRS and I said, I need a workout deal. And the nice lady at the IRS office says, hey, that'll be fine. I got up the next morning and they put a lien on my checking account.
Oh,
So I had to fight back. And fortunately, the legal system in this country gives you a way to fight back against the IRS. And if the IRS comes after you and you're in business and you're a legitimate business person, I don't think, we filed a Chapter 13 and I don't regret it. All my creditors were paid in full. And, it basically just put us on a path of austerity that lasted 5 years. Uh, and that's the way that I would explain that.
yeah.
But
And
but
just
we
so I
kept
can get
we held on, but we held on to our personal property that we
Mhm.
owned, and we held on to the duplex because we were, essentially just a business workout deal
right.
for the
Yeah.
IRS. They weren't really worried about taking everything I had. It wasn't like a Chapter 7 where you lose
Right.
everything.
Right. Yeah. That's very cool. So you said this was the 5 years austerity. Just so I have the timing right. When was this? Like
That was really
2004?
95 to 2000.
Okay.
And,
All right.
and those were the years when Ann, I had for a number of years, I had an office manager who's still a very good friend of mine. But she married a guy who was my patient, sent him to dental school basically, and then went to work for him. So anyway, I was stuck without an office manager, and my wife became my office manager in those years. And she turned out to be pretty good at it, and she upscaled our practice, helped us get out of the hole we were in. I
Nice.
also, I took a lot of training. I tried to take business training, become a better businessman. I did a lot of things to try to
Nice.
improve our situation, but essentially it was a 5 year austerity plan where all onerous debt was paid off,
Nice.
including my student loan, which was still not paid at that point. And so, we emerged from it pretty strong because we were debt free. We
Hmm.
still owned assets. and I was approaching the better years of my practice career. So
Got
it
it.
didn't put us out of business. And it, although it was very difficult and, I hate to talk about it sometimes, it was just part of life. And things
Yeah.
like that happen, even if you're a good guy sometimes.
Yeah.
So I don't
Yeah.
think there should be a big stigma attached to it personally.
No, it's funny you bring this up because one of the things I think might be the next couple of years. I've said it. I think the next couple of years are going to be very uncomfortable for a lot of people, and a lot of that might be bankruptcy, 13 or whatever. And there's a lot of debt out there. I think demand, the revenue side's going to be a little harder to come by, and there's just going to be have to like there be some austerity. Um, and it's okay, right? You get through it, you get stronger. In your case, you build a bigger business. You come out of this cocoon with no debt. Life's really good when you exit that. So I think that's pretty cool. So okay, you get this bankruptcy behind you. You're starting to build your practice. You still have the duplex. Where do we go next?
So from 2000 to 2009, I will say that those were the big years of sending my kids to college. And
Oh,
because
very
of real estate, I kept enough money from my practice that I basically paid for 4 college scholarships out of pocket.
mm,
I coming out of bankruptcy, I didn't have, I had some college savings, but we lost that, okay, in the bankruptcy. So I was very lucky to be at a point in my life where I was basically, I won't say I was printing money, but I was making really good money,
okay.
way better than most people make. I understand that. And I'm grateful. I mean, I think that that is something that, if you want to be a real estate investor and you're a working guy, the better job you can get, the more surplus you create because it starts with savings. Savings is the first step in investing. I don't care what you're investing in. You have to have some
Amen.
money. And if you're not producing a dependable regular surplus, it can't happen. And we were making enough of a surplus then to reach in our pockets and pay for tuition and books and housing and all those things that I'm sure you're well aware of because I know
Oh
you have
yeah.
a child
Yep.
that's going through that or has gone through that.
Has gone through it. Yeah. So it's amazing. One of the things, again, I have a very simple process to get wealthy, and you're right. Step one is you got to have discretionary income. If you don't have that income, left over that you could sock away that becomes the seed capital for the next asset, it's hard to get anywhere.
But
I'm just
anyway,
Mhm.
I would just say that basically at the end of that period, we got the Great Recession and the financial crash of 2008,
Yep.
and that's kind of the road splits there for me. Okay,
Awesome.
and I've read your book, and I know that was a big thing for you as well. And you went a different way than I went, and I admire what you did. But basically, what I did was I guess the less aggressive way to do things, but I did grow my portfolio at that time
Yep.
because it was just an awesome opportunity.
Yeah, it was.
Uh,
I'm curious, were you like all these properties you own today, all in Texas, all around Austin?
The only property I own that's not in Texas is the new one, which is near Flagstaff in Mountain Air, Arizona. It's actually less than an hour to Sedona. It's in the national forest in a little
Nice.
community that there'll never be another community built out like that because there are too many regulations today for a development like that to exist. And so it's a very cute little cabin community that's been there for many, many years. And now it's like a younger generation has kind of moved in there. And there are there actually in Mountain Air, there are actually a lot of people who are leveraging themselves by doing short-term rentals. And they're not in that particular community, they're not, as far as I can tell, there's no real stigma. Nobody hates short-term rentals.
Right.
People are glad they can rent their room and make a little extra money.
Yeah.
They don't really there's another neighborhood across the freeway called Kachina Village, which is a little bit higher end. It's a similar community, right? But
Mhm.
but it was in the old days, it was a newer community, and everything there had to be stick built. In Mountain Air in the old days, you could do anything, right? There was no, it was like the neighborhood I moved in Austin in 1987, right? Like, whatever you want. Nobody was
Let's
really
go.
paying attention. It's a little different now, but it's still the lots have minimal setbacks and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of an easier place to do things if you want to change things a little bit. There are rules, but that's where the STR is, and that's the only one I own that's not in Texas. Everything else is either in Austin or in the surrounding area. We own a house at Lake LBJ, which that was sort of just like something we picked up as personal property because we wanted it. It was not intended to be an investment. It's been a killer investment.
Good for you.
But it was not designed to be in the whole. I didn't buy. I bought it because I bought my little ranch, which I had been negotiating with the owner for 5 years before I
Mm.
bought it. I bought it in 2009, and I met the prior owner. 5 years before then, he actually put the property on Craigslist, and I saw it on Craigslist. This was back when there were cool things on Craigslist. And I went out and I met him. And as it turned out, I was still in a position where my credit was not that great. This was in like the, mid 2000s.
Mhm.
And what he found out was he also had some encumbrances on his legal status that he had to clear up before he could sell to me. And so we both remained interested in doing a deal. And the property I felt like was just very unique. When I moved to Austin, I told my father when I was 16 years old that I wanted to own property in the hill country. And it's because, we would go to places like Garner State Park where, the beautiful Frio River, Clearwater, there's some great places in the hill country. And so, my wife wanted to move to Austin. So, I was happy to live in the hill country. And I had always wanted to own property in the hill country, but in the I guess, maybe early 90s, I would go out and I would look at property west of Austin, like out toward Dripping and places like that. And it was already the riparian property, the creekfront property, like on Barton Creek and places like that. I looked at 10 acres. I said, man, I would love to have that. I called the agent. He's like, well, they want $1 million for that. I didn't,
Wow.
at the time, that was a great deal of money to me, right? And
Still a great deal of money.
even the real estate agent knew that they were dreaming. They weren't going to get it right then. So I thought it was never going to happen. I just really didn't think that was available to me. So when I ran across this place out in Burnett County, which is northwest of Austin, a little further out, then it had creek frontage on a little creek called Mill Creek, and it was very similar to exactly what I wanted. It had broken terrain. It was just a beautiful place. It wasn't really a place that was great for agriculture or anything like that, but recreationally is quite beautiful. And had pecan. We have pecan bottom here in our river bottoms and creek bottoms. So it had pecan bottom, and it had some other very nice topographical features with it had basically an 80-foot cliff on one side of the creek with
Oh, wow.
15 acres up on top with a big view. And I mean, it's just, there's so many nice things about my little ranch property that I could tell you. We could talk all day. But anyway, I had really wanted it very badly. And I, it looked hard to obtain, at one point, but I just kept. I knew I wanted it, and the guy who owned it wanted to sell it to me because he knew how bad I wanted it, and we had many things in common. Some of which involved, like not loving the IRS because he was an entrepreneur. Anyway, that happened. I bought that property, and then Ann was like, "Oh, we should have gotten a lake lot. I think that would have been a better investment." And so I said, well, maybe we could consider it, and so I went out and I looked at some lots, and at that time, Lake Travis was already having terrible drought problems, and so a lot of the properties on Lake Travis, are really nice properties, have been heavily impacted by drought, and it's not even clear now, exactly. How that's going to shake out in the long run. That's the number one thing wrong with the hill country as an investment for a short-term rental is like, what is the impact of drought going forward in Texas? And it's a legitimate concern. But anyway, I'll get back to the subject. But anyway, my wife wanted to have a lake lot, and we went around and I looked at some lake lots, and we were looking at lots one day, and there was a little house, and it had a sign up, and we called on it. It was actually like cheaper than most of the lots we were looking at
Ah,
because it
with
was
a house.
a little 950 square foot house built in the 60s, and
Yep.
it was basically one of those cookie cutter beach houses with a concrete block pillbox on the bottom
Yep.
and living area on top, pretty much. And
Mhm.
there's a million of those out there. In Galveston, there's still a ton of them. But somebody bought those plans and probably either built it themselves or hired local people to build it for them for a very, very small amount
Yeah.
of money back in the day,
Right.
which was, that development way out there, it was started in the mid 50s. And I've talked
Mm.
to people who are older who have owned property out there. And, it was just kind of like way out in the middle of nowhere for so many years. And
Yeah.
Lake Travis was bigger, and, it was affordable. And so nobody bought out at LBJ back then. Now LBJ is hot because
Mm.
LBJ is a constant level lake. It never is without water. And so
Nice.
I have a couple of recommendations. Anybody that wants to get waterfront real estate, one is get a constant level lake if you're in Texas, if you can. And the second one is always buy a pie shaped lot because it's the waterfront that kills you on taxes. You get something that's a beautiful big lot with a tiny little bit of waterfront. That's what you want. Put a boathouse there and you're golden, right?
Yeah.
You don't need like a 1,000 feet of waterfront because you will pay through the nose for that, buddy. But anyway, I
Yeah.
digress.
I love that. I love it. Great advice. So you still have both properties today? You have the
I
lakefront
do
lot.
still have both of those properties. We have three personal properties. Our primary home here in Rob Roy on the Creek. We're out in the ETJ, just outside Austin.
Okay.
We're the people who get impacted by Austin politics but don't get to vote. And so that's why you'll
Whoops.
see me rant quite a bit about Austin politics on Twitter because it's the only impact that I can make.
Yeah.
But I do try to, make a push. Austin, unfortunately, Austin's a great town. It has a bright future. Unfortunately, it has a lot. I've spent a lot of time in San Francisco because I used to train there. Okay.
Mm.
And so I started training in San Francisco around the year 2000. And so I've watched basically San Francisco just basically destroy itself with woke politics. And Austin is doing the same thing. And I would
Mm.
warn, that's my warning to taxpayers in Austin is, you're not in control, taxpayers. Some other people are in control, and it's because you don't vote.
Mm.
So the taxpayers in Austin are going to have to start voting, or, basically we're going to continue to see some very terrible things happen
Yeah.
locally here that it impacts landlords, quite frankly.
Yep. Yeah.
The taxes. My daughter is a school teacher, and I advocate for people like that, right? Because her income doesn't go up. In Texas, school teachers wonder if they're even going to have a damn job, all right?
Mm.
Because there's a big fight going on here between conservatives who want vouchers and poor people who want good public schools. And Texas traditionally had great public schools, but what happened with Texas is that Texas grew so fast, population wise, that the schools were saddled with debt that they had no choice but to take on, right?
Mm.
Because the population grew so quickly. So all the school districts in Texas spent a ton of money on buildings. So,
Sure.
paying teachers went down the list. And, teachers basically in Austin, Texas today barely make enough to own a home. And my,
Wow.
my daughter struggles. And so her taxes have gone up 100% since 2015 when she bought her house. And they're down a little now because Abbott did a couple of things last year, and Austin has had a lot of tax protesting. But in general, taxes in Austin are too high and only getting higher, and it's because we have a small, dedicated group of progressive voters, single issue voters. Some of them, other people are just very socialist and think that we should provide childcare for everyone who works here. We should do all these wonderful initiatives that somebody has to pay for, right?
Yeah.
And many
Yeah.
of the people who are voting for these initiatives don't pay anything. Okay,
Hmm.
and I don't view that as fair. I have no control over it. But that's why I'm active, at least a little bit active, trying to make people who are the real Austinites who have skin in the game show up and try to make it a little bit more like it used to be here
Yeah.
because it used to be really good.
Well, I would tell you to keep on fighting. I don't know if you saw the details out of the San Francisco election, but it looks like London Breed who was the mayor of San Francisco, lost re-election. Apparently, crime is now a crime once again in San Francisco. So I hope Austin doesn't go the way of San Francisco, so guys like you can keep the fight. But I am curious about one thing. In the intro, you talked about your parents and your in-laws, both kind of think real estate's a good thing. You've told us you have four kids. One of them is a teacher. I'm curious about the other three. Has anybody, one of your kids, kind of gotten the real estate bug, or no?
Uh, you know, two. Let's see, how many? Let's see. So all of my kids are like geniuses. Okay, I mean,
Awesome.
I take no credit. I don't know where it came from, but they all grew up to be a really amazing people. They're all different. My oldest daughter is a school teacher. She owns her own home. Okay. And, like right now, we're slowly in the process of like remodeling her bathroom. And I helped her, she doesn't have very much money, but she's also runs a summer camp in the summer, which is
Hmm.
a camp she attended when she was a kid,
Oh,
which
cool.
was like really, it's really an amazing story. We could talk about that all day. But the owner of this camp has gifted it to her now. She's 41 years old. The owner is in her 80s. Joan is taking over this camp, which is a camp for gifted and talented kids that she's literally been attending every summer since she was 6 years old. Uh,
Nice. I like that.
so she is very interested, and my second daughter, who's in medical school, who is living out in Mountain Air, which is why I picked Mountain Air, or at least one reason why I picked Mountain Air. Made me aware. They moved to Mountain Air. They had been living in an apartment in Flagstaff. They moved out there, and I was already looking for a short-term rental to buy, or a house that I could put in short-term rental, mainly because the way that cash flow has changed with higher rates and higher prices, right? So it's
Of
just a
course.
different game now. So I'm trying to learn to play a new game, to get the revenue, right? Because it's all about the revenue. And
Right.
so anyway, so that daughter has a degree in finance. She's a very interesting person too. She had a mild learning disability when she was a kid. She's dyslexic. She had to have tutoring every day of her young life. She developed a really phenomenal work ethic. And
Mm.
so, in college, she did well. And then, she had an accident, a physical accident, rock climbing. She was terribly injured in 2010.
Mm.
She could have lost her foot. It all worked out fine. She recovered completely. But as a result, she was laid up and she came to work for me temporarily. And so she went back to school. She got interested in body work first. Then she got interested in acupuncture and she went to acupuncture school. Chinese medicine's a 4-year school now. So she went to school for 4 more years after college
Oh,
to be
wow.
trained in acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And of course, when she got to the end of that, I suspected that she would, she realized that, it's all nice and everything, but you're not a doctor in the United States, with that credential, right? And
Hmm.
so she did decide to go on to medical school and was fortunate enough to get in DO school, which is, most people have been to an osteopathic physician. I mean, in
Hmm.
Texas, they have the same exact privileges as MDs. Uh,
Okay.
and they have a school. They're nationwide. They sort of have their own little network, but they have a school in Phoenix. And once you do a year in Phoenix, they farm you out somewhere to a hospital that they control somewhere in the hinterlands. And she ended up in Flagstaff, which was her first choice. And so she's
Nice.
got this great gig with her last 3 years in medical school in a beautiful place. And she had a baby. But she's the one, she has she has more debt than any of my other kids. And her probably her the best thing she's got going for her is me. Maybe I'll die and leave her some money, but she is oriented toward investing. She has a stock portfolio,
Hmm.
even though she had a stock portfolio when she was in college. She and I was into crypto for a couple of years. I gave her some crypto that I later got out of that mooned.
Hmm.
And so she made money in crypto.
Good
Uh,
for her.
And it was like it was one of those crypto stories like you hear. I mean, I've heard so many of them. It's like something you forgot about. You open your wallet one day and you go, "This is worth $20,000." I paid a buck 98, and it was very similar to that. But
Wow.
anyway, so she is oriented, and so her and her husband now, she's married, and they just had a baby, and they have an older. She has an older stepson, but they're going to help me with the short-term rental in
Okay.
there in Mountain Air
Makes
because
sense.
they live there, and they're able to coordinate for me for things like repairs and host issues and things like that, which I think will be very beneficial. And we're all going to
Makes
learn
sense.
how to do it together. And then maybe the next one can have a little more revenue than this one. I didn't really want to go big on the first one because I know how much I don't know, right?
Right.
And
Wise man. Wise. Been there before.
and so I wanted one, but I didn't want to bet the farm on it. So
Right.
I did. I found a very nice property after looking for a long time, and I paid as usual. It's like, I'm sorry, Mike, I didn't do the work. I just paid
Yeah.
too much. I'm
It's okay.
depending on
It's all right.
inflation to make me whole. But guess what? It will. Okay.
Yeah, if you hold long enough, yeah, that's the whole game of real estate is it
Anyway,
really yeah.
so I'm also my school teacher daughter. I hope to bring her in to maybe a future STR that she and I can do together.
There
I
you
would
go.
like to see. She wants to. She will not inherit the property that the summer camp is on. So
Mm,
she wants to buy property for a summer camp, and in Austin, that's hard to find.
got it.
So two of my kids are very oriented, toward investing in real estate, even though they're not at a stage where they're really doing it. Other than my daughter in Flagstaff would love to buy a home. They're not quite ready because she still has residency ahead of her, but they will, and
Yeah.
they certainly those two certainly understand that that's how Dad got his money. You know,
There you
uh,
go. That's
and
important.
my son, who is number 3 on the list, bought a home last year here, although he didn't buy in Austin. He bought out toward Bastrop, out in the southeast Austin quadrant, which is the low end quadrant in Austin
Mhm.
price wise. Okay.
Okay.
Out in the edge of Bastrop County, although. It's just like all the rest of Austin. It's just temporarily down its luck. That's all that property is going to be developed very soon, and
Hmm.
there are farms and stuff out there for sale that you could still buy and develop, which is rare around here. But he and his wife are artists. Okay, he should be a college professor because that's really what I think he would be great at. And he does sometimes lecture. They call him from not Southwest Texas, Texas State. It is now. They
Mm.
call him from Texas State. He went to Texas State as an undergrad. Then he went to the school at the Art Institute of Chicago.
Wow.
He worked in the art department for Crate and Barrel for about 6 years. And then he
Mhm.
moved back to Austin. And he actually makes his living doing what I would term art logistics,
Mm.
installing art. Austin's full of billionaires now. We
Yes.
have people with a lot of money, and
Hmm.
they all want to own a lot of nice art. And so, it's hard to find a guy who can pick up a 30-ton statue and put it in your backyard.
Yeah.
And my son can do that, right?
There you
And so,
go.
you know, he's still in the early stages. He worked for a company that basically a bunch of billionaires don't, threw some money in a pot and said, we need an art handling firm that has a warehouse and has all the things that they have in New York and LA. So he worked for this company that does that. And, he came to parting of the ways with them, but he's still doing that kind of work. And his wife is a glass blower, and
Mm.
she's in the maker culture. She blows glass, and it's not just art; it's functional art, and people will buy it. She will do things like make a set of glasses for a restaurant so that they have some kind of high-end blown glass that
Right.
they can put in front of their patrons and say, well, we have these cool things that you can't get down the street. So
There you
they're
go.
both entrepreneurial people who are they're struggling because art's tough. Let's face it. But I think, especially with my daughter-in-law, who comes from a family of business people.
Mm,
Her father is an architect in Manila. Her mother is his practice manager. They sent all their kids to the United States. My daughter-in-law basically, you know, uh, you couldn't tell her from the California Asian girl who lives down the street from you. I mean, she's a
yeah,
she's a California girl basically. And
nice,
anyway, but they're I think on track.
nice.
And they understand the benefit of real estate. I certainly have tried to impress on them that it is of course, which that's stuff I learned. I may have to block up my dog. Sorry. Why stop?
I
No.
don't hear him.
Oh,
It's okay.
good. Good.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't hear
Well,
him.
if he's not bothering you, I won't do anything. He sometimes barks at people out the window.
No,
Stop
I
it.
don't hear him. Yeah,
Okay.
he's fine.
Okay.
So
So,
that's number three. What about number four?
my youngest daughter, she's amazing too. She's a musician. Okay. She is a vocalist, and for some reason, I mean, if your parents are old rockers, I don't know what you do to rebel, right? Well, she became a vocalist who only sings jazz standards, right?
Okay.
And so, her husband uh, plays a bass.
Mm,
They've had several jazz combos. They made a good, I won't say a good living, but they made a living in Austin just doing music.
nice.
They wanted to live in the Apple. They moved to the Big Apple. They went to work for the Village Vanguard, which is probably the oldest jazz club in America. Everyone who works there is a musician, but you don't ever get to play because you're too busy pouring drinks. Uh,
Mm,
but anyway, so they went and they were at least in the culture of the jazz world in New York for a few years, and now like all musicians, they've grown up and they know they have to get a real job. And so my son-in-law is now becoming a family counselor, and my daughter has recently taken on a job as the director of the Bronx Conservatory of Music. She got a
wow.
master's. She got a master's in jazz from Queens College, and she's very entrepreneurial. She has a company that she does calligraphy for wedding invitations and does calligraphy type art for advertisers and things like that. She's done work for Condé Nast, for instance, and so
Nice.
she's building her brand. And I don't know if they will ever own a home. I expect what they'll do is live in New York and buy something in upstate, because
There
there
you go.
are, upstate's a bargain. Let's face it. I mean,
Yeah.
I know upstate's a bargain. I don't even live anywhere near there, right? But I can see that there's value in upstate New York. There are lots of great places, and also other places in that part of the world, I consider them undervalued right now. Whereas maybe Austin is, it was overvalued until, we've taken a pretty big hit, obviously. Uh,
Yeah.
Austin's weird. It's unlike any other real estate market in the country, and I don't think you can compare it to very many other places.
Yeah, I don't think so either, right? Watching it from the outside, when I look at Austin, kind of the 2009 Great Recession, Texas in general didn't take the hit California did, right? Fresno fell 75%, Texas, Austin, down, but nowhere close to that.
Well, it had not gotten overvalued because
True.
from 2000 to 2008, nothing happened here much. And
Yeah.
that's what we went into 2008 in a different position than a lot of markets. Uh, and then there's the other side of that, of course, is demographics. Uh,
Hmm.
you know, uh,
Correct.
because, I'm surprised you haven't moved here. Everyone else in
Yeah.
California.
Yeah.
Now,
California's doors
honestly,
open.
honestly, we moved here in '87, and ever since I moved here, there's been a steady exodus from California. This is not super new, but
Yeah.
obviously, since the big tech companies have established themselves here, it's
Mm.
only just been wave after
Yeah.
wave after wave of more and more.
Yeah,
And
I
and
remember I remember going to Austin. I remember it was funny. They actually called it the Nerd Bird. It was the San Jose to Austin flight in the morning was called the Nerd Bird because a lot of the tech guys would, Dell was there. I mean, these are 20 years ago.
right.
I'd be in Austin twice a month for, for years for work. So pretty crazy. Let's wrap this up. Let's give some people some hope. if you were going to give closing thoughts, you were talking to your family or maybe on Twitter, how would Dr. Ed or Eddie kind of wrap this up? What would you tell somebody to give them some hope?
Well, I think the main thing that I would say, Mike, is that, you know, accumulating real estate assets gives you lots of options in the end game. All right.
Yeah.
So I don't hear this talked about a lot either because most people aren't at the end game, but I'm pretty close, maybe closer than I want to be. But I have spent time this last year trying to figure out, well, what is my path to retirement? Because, I mean, I'm already, I'm about to be 69 years old this month, right? And I'm
Happy
still
early
a pretty
birthday.
active person. I still work full time. My practice, I don't make the money that I made in 2009 because dentistry has really, especially since COVID, we took a huge hit. Just like every other small business in America, we were struggling to stay alive. We're coming back from that. It's slow. I don't think that there may be dentists out there who are killing it, but I'm not killing it like I used to be, and we just do the best we can. But I have options. I have lots of options. I have somewhere lying around here. I have 6 or 7 pages of flow charts that are each different. That is a
Hmm.
path I could take to retirement. So I have many things at this point that I could do.
Nice.
I own 3 personal properties that together are worth probably on the order of $4 million just for my personal real estate. Okay. So, you know, yeah, could I keep all 3 of those in retirement? I could, but I probably won't because it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? But, can I take one of those, whichever one that we decide to take, uh, uh, you know, somehow, like the real property, you can 1031 out of a ranch. I
Yep.
didn't even know
For sure.
that until I started trying to figure this stuff out. But you can. There's somebody out there that needs to hear that. I hope they hear it. You can sell your farm and 1031 out of it, right? Unfortunately, that's the property I probably want to keep the most. But uh, uh, you know, the neighbors built a giant mega mansion on the house on the lot next door to our lake house, and it blocks the view a little bit. And
Mm.
so that might be the one, just because I mean, we bought that. We literally that house is a 3x since 2009, and,
Oh,
and it's worth easily $1 million. And
yep.
it's the land, the value's in the land.
For sure.
Somebody will tear that little cottage down and build another mega mansion because you know
That's what
it's
you do.
it's an hour from Austin and there's water there. You can go skiing.
There
If
you
you
go.
can't do that in Lake Travis, you might hit a rock. You know,
Yeah.
so anyway.
Not good. There you go.
But there are lots of options. Lots of different exits. Most dentists who are retiring, they depend on the sale of their practice to give them a big chunk of whatever their
Right.
retirement's going to be. And if they don't get a lot of money for their practice, they might be hurting. I mean, I've known in my years of service among my patients, physicians and dentists both who ended their careers pretty broke,
Oh,
right? And they all they had was their practice, and they sold their practice, and it saved them, and they had a decent retirement, but it could have been so much better had they done something different, right? And
mhm.
it's very easy to end up in that shape because time goes by quickly. You're not working for a corporation that says, "Hey, we got a 401k and we match. Do you want to put some money into this?" I mean, that's
Right.
a no-brainer, right? But if you're a dentist and you want a 401k, you basically have to match for all your employees. And
Right.
so that can become prohibitively expensive just to have a okay,
Yeah.
right? And if you look at those numbers and you look at the other ways you can make money, especially in real estate, you go, gee, I don't know if I even want to do that, right?
Yeah.
But and nothing against people who do, and there are companies that help dentists, get on track to make money in the stock market and all that, and there's nothing against that. But real estate just gives you a ton of options, and that's what I think. At the end of your career, that's what matters. You want to be able to exit gracefully. Uh,
Exactly.
if you're a dentist, you've probably had a pretty good lifestyle. I mean, we've eaten out for dinner every night for 35 years.
Mhm.
We're not going to stop eating in restaurants when I retire, probably.
Mhm.
Uh, So I
No,
would
I
like
don't
to
think
have
so.
enough money to pay for dinner, you
There
know.
you go. That's amazing. Well, I appreciate you giving us an hour this Sunday morning. I appreciate following you on X or Twitter. What is your handle? Somebody wanted to follow you on X.
Oh gosh, it actually changed because I lost my Twitter identity last year, and my option it's at
Yep.
Tennyson Eddie,
Yep.
capital T capital E uh, at
Yeah,
Twitter.
it's at Tennyson Eddie. So tennis on Eddie. Just
Right,
short.
it's like the game tennis with an O N on the end.
There you
And
go. Tennis
that's
on Eddie.
it. That's it. And yeah, I'd love to have somebody check out my Twitter channel. And I just want to say, I'm really privileged to be on your show. Uh, uh, of all the people on Twitter in real estate, there are really only two that I really think are heroes of mine. There were a couple more, but one of them died.
Oh,
That happens at my age.
that happens. That happens.
But you're one of the good guys. I think that there are many people in on social media that are in real estate that are selling something. I think you're giving things away. I know that you charge a little bit for some of the things that you do for people, but it is I consider that very nominal for what you
Mhm.
give back. And
Absolutely.
the mission that you're on to help people, it means a lot to me to see somebody like you doing that because it's just phenomenal, and I support you 100%. Um,
Yeah,
and
it's fun, man. It is really a lot of fun. Again,
I'm in
when
awe.
you
I'm in awe. You have so much energy, and I just don't see how you do it. But I enjoy your content. Anytime. I mean, I don't see a fraction of your content, but every time I click on one of your videos, I enjoy it. I get something out of it. It has information that I want and need, and I would recommend anyone to be involved in the programs that you have going on. I know I'm not the only money I really ever gave Mike was I bought his book, and he probably got 15 cents out of that. All right.
I might have
But
got a
aside
quarter.
from that, I have no skin in Mike's game,
Not at
but I
all.
admire him, and I think what he does is very unusual because most people in real estate they are trying to make a buck, and they may tell you some things that'll help you, but their primary interest is in their personal increasing their personal wealth through networking, and
Yep.
that's the way the internet works. And so, maybe that'll work for Mike, but I don't think that's his primary goal. I can tell that it's not his primary goal. It
Oh,
never was. Uh,
never was.
and I greatly encourage anyone who's getting started to avail themselves of what you have available. Okay, so I'll shut up there. But
I
I'm a big
appreciate it.
fan. I'm a big fan of what you're doing.
I appreciate it. Love this story. A lot of people are going to get value out of it. There's a lot here for you folks. Dr. Eddie, I appreciate you. Keep it up.
See you soon.